Welcome to the Take Your Apprenticeship podcast. The Take Your Place team is made up of 5 universities and 9 further education colleges from across the east of England. We are an impartial project dedicated to giving you the information you need, regardless of where you are applying to study. Since 2017, we have worked with over 30,000 students from 100 different schools, colleges and sixth forms, helping them to explore their options and discover their potential. Now we hope to help you too. In this podcast series, we will explore all aspects of finding, applying for and succeeding in an apprenticeship. Through talking to experts and current apprentices from a variety of industries, we will help you explore your future apprenticeship options.
My name is Kit Rackley and my pronouns are they, them, and I am a NICO Higher Education and Apprenticeship Champion for Take Your Place. Today, we talk about apprenticeships at the Crown Prosecution Service, or CPS for short. We talk to James Dillon, Ella Burrow, Ellen Mason and Izzy Elwood. All 4 currently have jobs at the Crown Prosecution Service, but all have completed apprenticeships with them. James now works as Human Resource Officer, Ella works as HR Manager, Ellen works as HR Officer, and Izzy works as Recruitment, Marketing and Communications Assistant. We will get their experiences of doing an apprenticeship with the Crown Prosecution Service. They will tell us a little bit about what the courses were like, how they first became interested in apprenticeships and their route from GCSEs to them, how they found the interview process, what a typical week is like in an apprenticeship with the CPS, what's it like earning a wage and what kind of support do you get, and some of the highlights. Let's have a listen. Hi everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Take Your Apprenticeship podcast. We are again joined by some lovely people from the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, if you've not heard the previous episode where we talked to James Dillon and Izzy Elwood, they're joining me again today. So you both say hi, welcome back.
Hi everyone.
Yep, so James and Izzy gave up their time for us last time and talked about from the CPS's point of view about how they offer apprenticeships, the kind of roles that you could do at the CPS and the jobs that they do. So do give that a listen. So if you're coming to this episode for the first time, strongly recommend you listen back to that one. But joining myself, James and Izzy today to talk about being an apprentice at the Crown Prosecution Service, we're also joined by Ella and Ellie. So welcome to you two.
Hi. Hi.
I don't think there's ever been 5 of us on one of these podcasts before, so we're going to give this a go. If you introduce yourselves and you can say what you quickly do at the Crown Prosecution Service and the apprenticeship or apprenticeships that you did at the CPS.
So my name's James Dillon and I'm a HR officer for our early careers team. When I joined the CPS, I completed a level 2 and a level 3 in operational delivery. All of the work is completed online and you're assigned a talent coach as well who helps you with the deadlines.
So I'm Izzy Elwood. I'm the recruitment, marketing and communications assistant in the strategic resourcing team. When I joined the CPS a little under 3 years ago, I joined on the level 3 apprenticeship in operational delivery. Similar to James, everything was done online. And we got to speak to a talent coach and work with them to complete the apprenticeship.
I'm Ellen Mason. I'm a HR officer in the recruitment team for the CPS. So I'm similar to James and Izzy that I started about 2 years ago as a level 2 business administration apprenticeship, which was 12 months. And now I'm doing a level 5 CIPD qualification in HR.
Hi, so I'm Ella Burrow. I'm the HR manager on the onboarding team in the strategic resourcing team. I joined the CPS again 2 years ago on a level 3 apprenticeship in operational delivery. So I just finished that in December, just being, and the same again. It was done online mostly.
I want to kind of get this kind of sense of when you join as an apprentice, as we want to try and communicate to young people listening, that it is employment, it is a job. And of course, just like any other employment or job, one of the things that people are very nervous about is, am I going to fit in? Am I going to make new friends? Am I going to be able to work very well with my colleagues? Let's start with that, therefore. So you four know each other very, very well. Let's go with Ella first. Ella, how did you feel when you were starting up your apprenticeship? Were you nervous? Did you know people already? When you met James, Izzy and Ellen for the first time, how did that feel? What was that like for you?
So I was quite lucky when I started my apprenticeship. So I started alongside James. We started on the same day. So it was almost like having a little buddy to go through the process with. So that was like a really good part of it. However, even if that wasn't a thing, the thing about joining as apprentices, I think it's kind of well known that you probably need a lot of support. I know for me personally, it was my first kind of proper office job, if you like, and having to make friends that way. So I found that everyone in the office was just really supportive, really friendly. Everyone was like willing to help. Everyone was willing to chat. It was a great experience for me. And as I say, I was just lucky that I had James alongside me as well.
That's a ringing endorsement, James. So do you want to naturally follow on from Ella, from your experience?
I was about to saying the exact same thing as Ella. So we started at the exact same time. I remember just walking through and seeing Ella there, and I was like, "Oh, you started today?" And she was like, "Yeah, yeah." And we were both like, "Oh, we've got someone." So that was like a great introduction, to be honest. But just to like repeat what Ella's just said, then even if we hadn't started at the same time, there's always been someone who's been able to offer a helping hand, no matter what grade. And because there was so many other apprentices on our team, I feel like we've always had that helping hand since we've joined at the CPS, which has been like a big factor, to be honest, because I'd worked in an office space before this role, doing another apprenticeship, and I felt like when I was doing that, I wasn't really given the support that I required. But in this role, I've had so much support throughout that it's just been like really essential to my learning throughout.
That's very, very good indication to anybody listening that if they're going to go for any kind of apprenticeship with any employer and training provider is to ask those kind of questions. Am I the only apprentice starting? Will there be a group of us? How will I be able to get to know the rest of the team? And we'll talk about the kind of support that you were given as apprentices a bit later. Going to Ellen now. Ellen, what made you decide that you wanted to go down the apprenticeship route? And you said that you're now doing a level 5, so that's absolutely fantastic. You're now moving on to that kind of diploma foundation degree level. So congratulations to that. I hope that's all going well for you. So what made you thought that apprenticeship was the right route for you? Why do you not take a different route?
Well, thank you. So for me, I went to university, but I felt, and I studied history, which I really enjoyed. But when I came out of university, I didn't, like a lot of people, had no idea where to go or what to do with it. And I felt like I didn't really have that kind of work experience that was potentially needed. So when I saw kind of the CPS were advertising for apprentices, and specifically in HR, for me, that was something I was quite interested in, to kind of get that hands-on experience in a more practical way for me. Earning the money while you're also learning has been a massive help. So that's kind of, it was just something I came across and I thought I'd give it a go, and it's been completely the right decision for me, and I'm really grateful for it.
Izzy, was that the same for you? Did you have the same kind of feelings as Ellen there about the reasons why you wanted to take an apprenticeship rather than go, or did you do a different route and then swap to or did you go straight into an apprenticeship after leaving high school?
Yeah, so I finished my A levels, and I had actually applied for university, but I'd say just before I did my A level exams, I dropped out of my application. I withdrew my application to university. I just didn't think it was right for me. I was almost applying because that was kind of the thing that everyone else was doing, and I just knew instantly that wasn't right for me. So after I left school, I ended up working full time at my part-time job, which was in a care home. So I was part of the catering company there. And then I saw the apprenticeship advertised for the CPS. It was actually in a different team within HR, not the team that I'm currently in. It was the talent management team. So I applied for that around April in 2018. and obviously I got it. And but yeah, I didn't really know what to do, and I think taking that year out after school enabled me to kind of think about what I wanted to do. And it just so happened that this opportunity came up, and I applied, and I got it.
You're saying such a common story from what we've heard, particularly on guests on the podcast, that quite a few guests have said, I was expected to go to university, or all my friends were going to university, or my teachers were gearing me up to go to university, but they found that the apprenticeship route was seemed to be more suited to them. And I think for people listening, that's absolutely key, is for them to make informed decision. And it's quite clear from me anyway, that from what I've heard you just say, Izzy and Ellen, is that you were making informed decisions and not to be afraid to make a decision based on the information that you've got. So thank you very much for that. What was your route from GCSEs to your apprenticeship? So did your A-levels inform your apprenticeship, or was it really your apprenticeship was like nothing to do with your A-levels?
No, my A-levels actually, I think, pushed me towards doing the apprenticeship. I did an A-level in business. I'd also done that at GCSE, and I was really interested in that. And I'd also done law at A-level. So as soon as I saw an apprenticeship within the CPS, I did instantly think, oh, that's something that I could maybe go for, and that looks quite interesting, something that I'd like to develop in, even if it's not on the legal side, and was obviously more on the operational delivery side. I did think that having my A-levels did benefit me, but then now in the role that I'm in, I'm still going back to stuff that I've learned in my A-levels and my GCSE. I did GCSE and A-level graphics, and I'm currently moving towards more into the graphics side of marketing. So there's definitely been a crossover between the stuff that I've learned in school and then being able to apply it into my day-to-day job and my apprenticeship as a whole.
Ella, what was your route into your apprenticeship? Was your GCSEs, A-levels or level 3 qualifications heavily influential to do your apprenticeship, or was there other things involved as well?
So I'd probably come at it from a different angle from Izzy completely. I'm probably the other side. So my GCSEs and A-levels really had not much at all to do with the apprenticeship I'm in. So I completed my GCSEs and then went on to do A-levels at sixth form. I did maths, further maths and physics. And then after that, I just had no idea what to do, because I'd kind of picked those A-levels because I was good at them in school. But I didn't really think about what I would want to do with them career-wise. And then I took a gap year after my A-levels, just to kind of make sure I chose the right thing, like whether it was uni, whether it was a job, whether it was apprenticeship. And funnily enough, I came for an interview for this position. I think it was a year after I left, so about late 2018. And then I got put on the reserve list. And then it'd been like a few months and I hadn't heard, so I just decided that, right, I'm just going to have to go to uni. I never wanted to go to uni, but I just kind of thought at this point I don't really have any other choice. So I did that, and just before I signed the lease on my accommodation, I got offered this apprenticeship. That was kind of, it was really strange timing, but I was absolutely made up, because same as Izzy, I just never ever wanted to go to university at all. I knew it wasn't for me, but that might provide hope to anyone who is doing kind of A-levels at the moment and thinks they're not relevant to maybe the business sector or any career that they're interested in. Mine had nothing to do with this apprenticeship.
And that's really, really good message, is that, some apprenticeships will have entry requirements, will say that they would like, a level 3 or A-level in this, that, the other, or a GCSE or a level 2 in this, that, and the other. Some apprenticeships don't. And also, perfect example of yourself there, Ella, is don't give up the ghost if you're really keen on something, because you never know if it might, because you could have easily have retracted that apprenticeship thinking, oh, they're never going to get back to me, I'll just email them and say I'm not interested again and go to university. But you didn't do that, and everything worked out for you. So
yeah,
so that's a really, really good message. I'm going to go to James now, because James, last episode, for those who haven't listened to it yet, and again they should, you used this lovely analogy about stepping stones. I think Ella's journey, or both Izzy and Ella's journey, really just kind of gives that really good kind of stepping stone kind of aspect to it. That some stepping stones will lead you to the apprenticeship you want to try and go for. Some of them may lead you in a completely different direction. but you're moving forward anyway. So just to echo that your stepping stone analogy that you beautifully used last episode. But what about your journey, James? What was yours like? Was it more like Ella's or was it more like Izzy's?
Do you know, it's kind of similar to both in a sense. I think overall, I was really stuck when I finished school. I had no idea of what I wanted to do next, so I kind of just decided that I would pick a subject that I really enjoyed doing. So I wanted to go into media studies. So I decided to go to college to do like an A-level fast track for media. But I got like halfway through the course. I remember there was this one day where the whole room were like filling in like an application to university, and I was just sat there thinking, I've never like envisaged myself going to university, so I felt a little bit like pushed into doing this application. And I remember going up to the teacher and saying, "Oh, I actually don't want to go to university. Can I just continue this course and maybe develop my own like career in a sense?" But they were just like, "Whoa, you need to go to university if you're on this course," and that just give me like warning signs straight away. So it led to me dropping out of the college that I was in, and going into I ended up doing some volunteer work. And then from that, I ended up going to do a different apprenticeship for a letting agency, and then that led me to another role that I was in for around 4 years. But I was always in the mindset that I was not at the place where I wanted to be. So as I mentioned earlier, you know, that I feel like those are the stepping stones which brought me to this apprenticeship that I seen on civil service jobs. And I read through it, and I always heard about like the benefits of being in the civil service and the progression that was on offer. So I was really like attracted by that aspect. And when I actually left school, I didn't obtain the equivalent to a C in maths. So the great thing about the apprenticeship is if you didn't attain a C in maths or English, you're actually provided with a second chance to obtain a level 2, which is the equivalent. So that was another factor of me applying for this apprenticeship, to be honest. I applied for the role, same as Ella, got placed onto a reserve list. And then I was waiting around, to be honest, in my previous job, just fingers crossed that something would pop up. And then 6 months later, luckily enough, something did arise, and I just went straight for it, to be honest, and never looked back.
We'd like to take a break just to ask you to help us with some feedback. We aim to raise higher education aspirations in as many young people as possible, so your feedback will be welcome. To do this, at your own convenience, please visit tinyurl.com/tyapod. If you missed that, not to worry, you can find the link in the description. Thank you. Now back to the podcast. This is such a great range of experiences, and Ellen, we don't want to miss you out here. So what about your experience?
Yeah, so I was obviously quite different than James and Ella and Izzy in that I did go to university, but actually it was probably, I had a similar thought process that they had at the beginning, whereas I didn't really see another option. It was kind of the expected route for me, and I think for me it was the right thing to do, because I didn't feel ready really to go into the world of work. Really, I wanted to stay in education a bit longer, but then so I had that kind of panic 3 years later when I realised I didn't know where I wanted to go with it, or kind of the experience I wanted to gain from it. So I kind of had a similar point when this apprenticeship came up, that I had that thought process, oh, I'll just give it a go and see what happens. But obviously I came from a slightly different route.
I want young people to listen to this and go to and not feel disenfranchised or devalued about themselves. You've all come from different backgrounds. You've all had doubts and second thoughts at some point. And this is just a fantastic example of how, of communicating that is totally okay. And it never leads to the end of an opportunity, the end of a road, if you're not certain, if you need to rethink or even as James in your example, or having to stop something halfway through because you don't feel it's the right way forward. Never be ashamed to feel those kind of things. And so thank you so much, you for sharing that, because I think that's really going to speak to the heart of a lot of young people who are really unsure about their future right now, that that things can chop and change. You mentioned a bit earlier about the benefits, which is most common about apprenticeships, that you are getting a qualification while you're being paid, and there are no course fees or tuition fees, things like that. I want you to be really honest with me. You're not going to get in trouble with your employers, because I'll ask this in a certain way, but they know that the pay is important. And James, you mentioned last episode, again, some of the rates are fantastic actually for apprentices. So just give me a score out of 10. How much out of 10 did you think that the fact that you got paid and there were no student debt being involved was important to you when you were applying for, or you were trying to hope to get an apprenticeship? So score out of 10, how important, James?
See, so because I've done an apprenticeship prior to this apprenticeship, I'm kind of comparing them in a sense.
Okay.
And I'm gonna go out and give it a straight out 10, to be honest, just because I think with the salary that you get, alongside the qualification that you gain towards the end of it, for me, like for someone who's just coming out of school, our apprenticeships are just kind of a no-brainer to go for, just because they offer so much with such a competitive salary. Like I said earlier, I remember the day I got into the office, I was already really ecstatic about the salary I was going to be getting, and to be told after 6 months it would be rising to like the higher spot rates, that like blew me away. I remember going home to like my parents saying, can you believe that like my salary is going to be rising to this, when I've been on like an apprenticeship in the past which was like less than minimum wage? So that for me, that's like some of my reason behind why I would just give it a straight out 10.
So is it out of 10, how important was this element of no tuition fees and a wage while you're doing this?
Definitely a 10. I really can't give it anything less, to be honest. It's definitely a 10.
Fair enough. Ella?
Completely agree, 10.
Okay. Is it going to be like Strictly Come Dancing where we get full score, Ellen?
It is. It's going to be a 10 from me as well.
Okay. You know what? I'm not really surprised, to be honest, but there are people listening who are seriously considering university, and we know that the student debt issue is another discussion, and students shouldn't be worried about it, but it is a mindset which is very important, and clearly it was very important to you for. And while I've got everyone's listening, a really good website that people may be or may not be aware of is Martin Lewis's Money Saving Expert, which is absolutely fantastic, and there's a student section that they can look at for some really good independent financial advice there. Okay, we'll look into the apprentices that you did in particular. So we'll go with Ella and Ellen, who wasn't on with us last time. Ella, just paint a picture for us about, when you were doing your apprenticeship, what was the role like? What was the training element like? Can you paint us a picture for us for a typical week?
Yeah, so the way it works in our organisation in particular is we get 20% off the job training, and that's throughout the whole kind of duration of the apprenticeship. So that equates to about 1 day a week. So 4 days of the week would just be kind of normal, doing stuff for work, that kind of thing. And then the 1 day of the week we'd have an apprenticeship we'd normally take it, completely turn our emails off, turn all calls off and stuff, and just be able to focus on the apprenticeship itself. And it's just kind of a case of getting on with a lot of it was, as we said before, it was kind of online learning, so online sheets and worksheets to fill in. But you'd also have about once a month you'd have a meeting with your talent coach. So that could kind of fall on that day as well, and that would just be to make sure you're on track with everything. If you had any questions, that kind of thing, you could hash them out then. And yeah, there was also kind of a lot of trackers that we had to fill in, which is something that really helps me, because even if you didn't get you 1 day a week, say 1 week you're really busy in work, you could kind of use other things that were part of your job to put on your tracker. So say if you went for a training course, that would count as learning. Okay. So it really made me more mindful of what I was actually doing in my role.
And yeah, and that's a really good experience of what the job's really, really like, is that most jobs you can do what's called CPD, don't you? Continuous professional development. And that's just a nice little, and it's lovely that fed into your qualification as well, rather than it being on top of. Ellen, what I'd like you to do is also give your, what your typical week for a level 2 was like. But for those who are thinking about those higher levels, how do you expect your level 5 course to be different from your level 2? Because clearly, there's a 3 levels difference. It's the equivalent of a difference between a GCSE and a foundation degree. So start off by telling us about your experience of a typical week for your level 2, but what are you expecting it to be different? How are you expecting it to be different for your level 5?
Yeah, so my week as a level doing the level 2 was very similar to Ella's, that it would be, you'd have your 20% off the time training, you'd have your online learning, and it wasn't necessarily that strict in that some weeks you might feel like you don't need any kind of learning time, and then the next week when you might have a couple of worksheets or assignments due, you take a little bit extra. So it was kind of a bit more flexible in that sense. And like Ella said as well, I'd have kind of it used to be face-to-face meetings with a tutor once a month, and we'd kind of talk through any issues I'd had and any questions I needed answered and things like that. So that was really useful, and it was a really good foundation for me to then move on to the level 5, which is obviously, like you say, it is quite a big jump, and it's not a jump I did straight away. I didn't finish my level 2 and then straight away go on to the level 5. I kind of had a year a year and a half, I think, without doing any other apprenticeship and just kind of gaining that work experience. But for me, the level 5s, it's just a bit more in depth in kind of what I'm learning. So it is HR specific. It's a bit more structured in the sense that each week I've got certain tasks I need to complete. I've got an assignment I think it's around every 2 months, which are obviously a bit bigger in depth. So before I'd have an assignment that could be 1,000 words, and now I'm doing 5,000. So it's kind of the jump in that sense.
Wow.
So it is definitely a jump, but it's something that you also kind of get the additional support with from your online tutors, in that you meet a bit more regularly. They kind of provide a lot more online teaching. And something I've found as well, and I don't know whether Ella and James found this, and Izzy, because they did the slightly different apprenticeship to me to begin with, but the apprenticeship at the moment really tries to get you involved with people of your cohort. So they might not even be necessarily working for the CPS, but as an external provider, they kind of put you in contact with other apprentices doing the same work, and that's been something that's been really, really useful for me, to kind of speak to people completely in a separate job and a separate organisation, but having to go through the same sort of assessments and assignments, and kind of all getting to know each other and getting to know what everyone's doing has been really interesting.
I guess the training providers taking people from all kinds of employers. So do they actually do things together and mix things together? So that is a fantastic insight. And I'm going to, and listeners, I'm going to be determined to see if I can find out to what extent how common that is, whether some training providers do it more than others, or clearly the Crown Prosecution Service and their training provider do it. So that's a really interesting insight. Thank you so much for that, Ellen. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask each of you a different question. So the first question I'm going to ask is, think back to the time that you went to interview. Okay, can you give us maybe just a 60-second summary of what that interview experience was like? What advice would you give to your slightly younger self? What would you say? So what was your interview experience like, and what tip would you give to your younger self? And that's going to go to Izzy.
I'm just thinking back to when I did my interview, because it was well over 3 years ago now. I mean, obviously I was nervous. I really was very, very nervous. It was my first proper face-to-face interview that I'd ever done since leaving school, to be honest. Around the same time I was applying for other jobs that weren't necessarily an apprenticeship. So, but this was the first interview out of all of them. So I was very, very nervous. But I mean, I walked in, I got welcomed by one of the panel members. I know that now we have designated facilitators that come and meet with the person that's being interviewed, but it was just one of the panel members that came down to get me. They took me up to one of the conference rooms in the York office, and I just sat down. I mean, everyone was really lovely. I was actually being interviewed by the team that were going to be taking me on. That was obviously members of the HR talent management team, and I just, because I'd never been in an interview experience before, I think I just went in, and I think that actually did benefit me, because I just went in and I was just myself, and I just answered the questions. And I mean, we do, like I say, it has moved on since I did my interview. We now use success profiles, so that's part of the civil service wide interview and application process. But at the time, it was just a competency based interview. And I just went in and I was just myself, and I think that kind of benefited me, because that enabled them to see me as a person, and I think that benefited me in a way that they could just see that I was just a genuine person. I was just really keen to progress and look for the right opportunity within that team.
And honesty is the best policy, because if you get the job as you hope, you know, you could be spending months, years with these people. They're going to get to know the real you anyway. So honesty up front and being yourself is always a very, very good piece of advice, a good top tip there, Izzy, for your interview. Right. So the next question I'm going to ask is, if you moved away from home to do your apprenticeship, or you lived at home, what was it like being independent for the first time? Or if you were living at home, what was it like still living with your parents while you were doing your first time job? So Ella, what was your experience with that first kind of break with independence? I mean, was you at home, or did you move away to do your apprenticeship?
So I stayed at home to do my apprenticeship. I've still never moved out since.
Okay.
But
what's that been like for you?
Yeah, it's been great, to be honest. I'm quite lucky. I got on with my mum. She's the only person I live with. But the office that I was doing my apprenticeship in was in Liverpool, and I live in Southport, so it's about a 1 hour drive or commute on the train. So it was quite nice having that kind of break away from just staying in the town that I live. So the job I had before, I just worked at a bar down the road from me. So it was my first time kind of going into the city centre. And so even though I didn't live away from home, I had the independence in that way. So that was really, really good.
So I'm guessing that your mum's like, yeah, like Ella, like she's an adult, she's grown up, she goes ahead, she does what she wants, and it's just as long as you're doing your chores. And what do you pay rent, just out of interest?
Yes, I do pay rent. Especially since I got this apprenticeship, started getting paid. She was right on that. But yeah, no, she's happy to kind of let me get on with whatever I'm doing. Yeah. She trusts me, so I'm lucky.
Yeah, and of course it's personal circumstances. So, you know, some parents will say, no, you're fine. Or just pay us some little allowance or something. Yeah, so it's all on personal preference, and young people, you know, you work that out with your folks, and of course, or you may decide to move out of a home for, you know, your own reasons. So always think about what we said a bit earlier about informed decisions and things like that. Okay, so the next question, and we've got two people to answer this. So, okay, actually, I'll ask the same question to both of you remaining. So James and Ellen, I'm going to ask you this question. I'd like each of you, please, to tell us something. So a highlight you had of your apprenticeship. So your fondest memory of your apprenticeship, perhaps. It could be a bit of fun. You know, it doesn't have to be about the job itself. It could be something to do with your colleagues, as long as you're not going to get anyone in trouble, obviously. So James, we'll go with you first. Have you got like a fond memory or a highlight of your apprenticeship?
To be honest, they might be sitting there cringing at me, but I'd probably just say meeting everyone on the team. Because ever since I've met everyone, everyone on our team has just been so friendly and so helpful throughout, and I really feel that they've been like a big impact in my progression as an apprentice, and have helped me to get to where I am now. So without them, I don't think I would be in the position that I'm in right now. So my fondest memory is being with them, and even out of work, we've done things together as a team, had little team nights out, and it's all been great, to be fair, just to get to know everyone more on the team, and to work hand in hand with them to complete our day-to-day tasks while working alongside other apprentices who have got so much in common with you and doing the same things. It's just all been such a great learning curve.
Oh, that's really, really nice. And I do pick that up from all four of you, actually. So Ellen, yourself, just to finish off then, what would you say is your fondest memory or your highlights of your apprenticeship?
So I do have to agree with James that obviously meeting everybody on the team has been amazing, and I think, like you said before, it's really nice that we all kind of get on and we know each other really well. And then just kind of in addition to that, I can remember a day where we had an apprenticeship day in Birmingham, and it would be apprentices from all over the CPS kind of all meeting for like a team building day, kind of a networking day. And I can remember that being a really interesting day and experience as well, because we could go with members of the team, but then also meeting the wider apprentices across the CPS and doing some fun activities and things like that. So that was another highlight for me as well.
It's absolutely been a pleasure to not just chat to you for the podcast, but also to meet you and get to know you. And this is one of the delights of the job that I have. So thank you, James. Thank you, Izzy. Thank you, Ella. And thank you, Ellen, for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been really enjoyable.
It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to our future podcasts at soundcloud.com/takeyourplace or on your favourite podcasting app. You can also find us on Instagram, where we are at takeyourplace_HE, on Twitter at takeyourplaceHE, and on Facebook at facebook.com/takeyourplaceHE. You can also email us with any questions, requests, or just to let us know what you think on info@takeyourplace.ac.uk.
We very much welcome your feedback on this podcast episode. This will also help us to raise higher education aspirations in as many young people as possible. To do this, please visit tinyurl.com/TYA pod. That's tinyurl.com/TYA pod. You can find the link also in the description.